Greetings, Harbingers. Welcome to Iliaster, PewDiePie's favorite channel. In today's video, we're talking about El Salvador, the new land of free. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, leave a comment, you know the drill. Let's get to it. In today's video, I'll be breaking down the subject so it's easier for the dynamic here, okay? First, we're talking about an overview of El Salvador. Then, we're talking about President Nayib Bukele, who is this person and why he and El Salvador is drawing so much attention. How did El Salvador become the safest country in the American continent? The interview that Bukele had with Tucker Carlson recently, and I'm leaving the source of the information I'm bringing here, okay? First and foremost, do you see this tree behind me? That's a yucca tree, a widely known tree in El Salvador, just out of curiosity. The yucca tree, also known as cassava or manioc, is a significant plant in El Salvador, both culturally and economically. The scientific name of the plant is Manihot esculenta. It is a woody shrub native to South America, but has become widely cultivated in the tropical and subtropical regions around the world, including El Salvador. Okay, so first topic. Overview of El Salvador, and by the end of the video, after bringing the sources and the context, I will give my personal opinion on the subject. Okay, so just a context, a general context about the country of El Salvador. El Salvador, officially known as the Republic of El Salvador, is the smallest and the most densely populated country in Central America. It is bordered by Honduras to the northeast, Guatemala to the northwest, and the Pacific Ocean to the south. The country's capital is the largest city, is San Salvador. El Salvador has a rich history dating back to the pre-Columbian era, when it was inhabited by various indigenous people. The country was colonized by Spain in the 16th century and gained independence from Spanish rule in 1821. So it's a relatively new democracy, right? It later became part of the Federal Republic of Central America until the federation dissolved, after which El Salvador became a sovereign nation. About the economy, El Salvador has a mixed economy that relies heavily on agriculture, manufacturing, and services. The main agricultural products include coffee, sugar, corn, and rice. In recent years, remittances from Salvadorians living abroad have also become a significant source of income of the country. So people go to the US, to other countries, and send money to their families in El Salvador, and that also helps boosting the economy.
And here comes the wind. We love the wind, and of course soon there'll be an airplane as well. So since there's wind, I'll just drink my water here. I'm not sure I'll be keeping this part of the video, but what do you think? Do you like these bloopers? So I'll just leave this blooper here and you tell me if you like them or not.
Let's talk about the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz was born on July 24th, 1981 in San Salvador. He comes from a prominent family with a diverse heritage. His father, Armando Bukele Catan, was a businessman and an imam of Palestinian descent, and his mother, Olga Ortiz de Bukele, is of Catholic background. Nayib Bukele attended the Central American University but did not complete his degree, opting instead to enter the business world. About his presidency, he was elected president of El Salvador in 2019, running as candidate from the Grand Alliance National Unit, Ghana, party after breaking away from the Farabundo Marti National Liberation Front, FMLN. Bukele's victory marked a significant shift in Salvadorian politics, as he became the first president in 3 decades not to be from the two main political parties, the FLMN and the Nationalist Republic Alliance, ARENA. How did El Salvador become the safest country in the American continent, along with Canada, believe it or not? About 3 years ago, we start seeing this movement in El Salvador because Bukele, the President Bukele, along with police and the army forces from El Salvador, they managed to eradicate the factions and the gang and the criminals that ruled, if I'm not mistaken, more than 9% of the territory of El Salvador. San Salvador was known as the murder capital city of the world, and this parallel state overtook more than 90% of the country's territory. So for a sovereign country having more than 90% of its territory taken by gangs, by criminal factions, by all the worst kind of criminals. It's just insane. If you are from South America, from Central America, you might be kind of used to it. I know how crime is high, and we're like used to this sort of absurds, and there's no political interest to revert this situation. I wonder why. But fortunately, that wasn't the case in El Salvador. President Bukele managed to eradicate these criminal activities, and in 2 years or so, El Salvador became the safest country in the American continent, topping alongside with Canada. How did they do it? Well, in Tucker Carlson's interview with President Bukele, Bukele said that the first thing about the strategy that they did, he prayed and he asked gods for wisdom. I'll leave the link of the interview here in the description. If you watch the interview, you will notice that Tucker Carlson was like surprised by hearing that. Like, you guys prayed? And he said, yes, me and my the board, the responsible people for the strategy committee, we prayed and we asked for God's guidance and God's wisdom in how to handle this. They basically went all over the country, creating sieges, fencing the surroundings in which was domained by the factions and the criminals, and they got one by one and they arrested them all. They built like this super security prison and tossed all the criminals in the jail. Since more than 90% of their territory was taken, the opposition, the Congress, the presidency, they all agreed in having an emergency state because it was the only way to handle that situation. Because imagine walking on the streets and you weren't safe anywhere. They also said in the interview that the factions, the criminals, cooptated the minor age and forced them to be part of the crime, and like they had no other choice. You live in a street and you are approached by these criminal groups and they force you to join them. Before Bukele, before this operation, there's nothing anyone could do, and these kids had no choice other than join the crime, like by force. So they did all that. They arrested everyone, all criminals, and the country suddenly became safe. And now the El Salvadorians from abroad are returning. Construction sector is rising. The economy is rising. Safety is paramount. You can't have a healthy economy. You can't have like education if people aren't safe. If you can't walk in the street, be worried if you're gonna be mugged or worse. In the case of El Salvador, those gangs, not only they are involved in drugs and traffic, the worst things you can think of. Bukele also mentioned in the interview with Tucker Carlson that some gangs were also involved in satanic rituals, offering children to the devil or whatever twisted, terrible thing, that is about. I can't imagine what was that like and how awful this is and how that's the word satanic, like evil in its purest form. That's horrifying. He also mentioned that some of those lowest rank criminals, some of them didn't sign for it. Like, hey, I won't sacrifice, I won't murder a kid and offer it to the devil, Even some of those criminals, think of the worst kind of people, even some of them, like, okay, this is too much. So after this video, I encourage you to watch the full interview that President Bukele had with Tucker Carlson. It's very enlightening, and I wish we had more leaders like Bukele instead of the ones we have in the West, if you know what I mean. Sometimes we must be pragmatic and forego the established positivism and just be pragmatic and do what's need to be done in order to guarantee people's safety. The problem with some positivistic laws is just the very nature of positivism. Some bureaucratic opinion becomes a law because it's a problem that cannot be solved, and then they create a law for it because there's no political will to solve a problem. So it's about meeting the bureaucratic criteria, follow the table and don't actually solve the problem. That bothers me a lot, actually. We need to be pragmatic and overcome this inefficiency that bureaucracy brings along with centralized power with a handful of people only. I think that's the message of this video. I hope you like it, and I hope that the example of El Salvador gets spread out throughout Central and Latin America and to the world. Why not? If you like this video, please leave your comments. I'll leave the sources here of the things I mentioned in this video. Watch the full interview with Tucker Carlson, and well, I did not find any more appropriate title than El Salvador, the new land of free, because that's what this country has become, and let's watch its progress. I think it's gonna be amazing if they keep up this rhythm, doing things and having the political will to be pragmatic and overcome bureaucracies to actually solve the problems and makes people's life better. Thank you. See you in the next video.